Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from No Pants Are Safe from the Neighbors from Hell subreddit. And it says, neighbor drives through my yard and dumps their garbage on my property. I've been dealing with some bad neighbors for 3 years now. I thought I'd share my story both for entertainment value but also ask, what would you do differently in my situation? The context behind the neighbors. An old man lives there who had a wife that passed away before I moved in. Now, some younger people from the projects who aren't related to him take advantage of him and live with him rent-free. How they met, I didn't know. Despite the less than reputable characters that live with him, the old man is the biggest thorn in my side. I wish I could post pictures in this subreddit, but I'll just have to describe it. My house is situated further back from the road than theirs. I can see into their backyard from my front door. The old man likes to drive into his yard and pull up to his front door to unload groceries so he doesn't have to walk as far to take them in the house. I understand that part. The problem is, he pulls down my driveway and across my yard to get to his front door. It kills my grass and leaves ruts in the yard. The next time I saw him outside, I asked him to stop driving in my yard and he said he would, but he kept doing it. A second time I asked him to stop and again, it didn't stop. After the third, I was angry, so I went to his house and pounded on the door but nobody answered. I went home, wrote an angry note and package taped it to his door, threatening to call the police if it happened again. Surprise, it happened again. So after the fourth time it happened, I went to the police, and the police told him to stop, and he did. To this day, he hasn't driven in my yard, thank goodness, but the story doesn't end here. After my trouble with them, I put Ring cameras up on my property, and last month my cameras caught something baffling. He dumped a big box TV on my property. I have a huge yard and a lot of land. I even own some woods. He has a fenced-in yard and also owns some woods. He rode his lawnmower into my front yard, down my side yard, and into my backyard all the way to my woods and dumped a box TV back there. It wasn't even 3 feet into the woods. You know, rather than leave it by the curb for the garbage company to recycle for free, he had to get rid of it on my property. The audacity. So, naturally I took a picture of the TV and pulled the recordings from my cameras and took it to the police. The police are charging him with littering and forcing him to remove the TV and dispose of it properly, as well as trespassing him from my property. He'd be hit with criminal mischief if he even sets foot on my property again. There was one morning last year where I woke up to go to work in the morning, and there was like 10 local police cars and state cops all outside his house. Here the people from the projects that were living with him were dealing drugs out of his house and they were doing a bust on them. Everyone but the old man was arrested, and they just got let out of jail this month and are back in the house. I really just need to move. It's a shame because I live in such a nice neighborhood. It's the reason I even picked the house, the location. I've talked to my other neighbors about the bad neighbors and they said everything was fine before the old man's wife died. But now he almost seems like he has dementia and is being taken advantage of by some bad people. And now I have drug dealers and trespassers right next door. Fuck my life. Now, hopefully you guys know me by now. I love a Nightmare Neighbors story, and I'm always watching like Nightmare Neighbors on the TV when I get a spare moment. And boy, neighbor driving across your yard like that and leaving marks all over it would piss me right off too, and dumping stuff in your backyard. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people talking about the vulnerability side of things as well, which is, you know, absolutely could be the case. As I said, I was watching a Nightmare Neighbors, and in this particular episode, it was a small set of flats who all live next door to each other, and this guy's next door neighbor had this elderly woman and her grandson was living with him, but he was dealing drugs out in the shed just outside their house. So this neighbor was concerned because all sorts were turning up outside his house during the night and trying his door as they was going past and creating a really scary situation for him. But when the local council went to check in on the older lady who was being taken advantage of, she was like, no, that's my grandson, I'll do anything for him. But when they went to talk to the actual guy who was the grandson, who was the drug dealer, he was just so blasé and didn't give a shit for the trouble that he was bringing to her door, and it was just incredibly sad. But I think OP just needs to report the hell out of it, because they need to protect themselves at the same time. But Oreo Coppertop says, call the police for suspicious activity at every opportunity. If the cops know they deal drugs, they will keep coming out and it will make their business suffer. Would also call Adult Protective Services to do a wellness check on the old man. The problems may go away sooner than you think. Opie says, yeah, I know 4 of our local cops really well now, even graduated with one of them. They know my neighbors really well, by name and everything. One of them called them a cancer to the county. They're very familiar with them and always happy to go cause trouble on my behalf, thank goodness. I never knew about Adult Protective Services. I'll have to look into that. Fawn says, I think this is what's going on. Old man's wife died and he became lonely. Was befriended by a group that saw the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. They're using him to further their criminal enterprise, and he's developed dementia to the extent he's unable to fully see what's going on or doesn't possess the faculties to stop it. The best you can hope for is for his family to intervene. Second best is for him to become a ward of the state and them to take control of the situation, including his assets. What you don't want to have happen is the group to gain ownership of his house. You should contact Adult Protective Services now. The best case scenario would be for another drug bust to happen. While the group is in jail, old man gets moved to assisted living. Group gets out of jail and comes back to a boarded up house with no trespassing signs and eviction notices posted. If they break into the house, you're there to immediately call the cops for criminal trespassing. House gets renovated and rented or sold. Funds go to old man's estate so he can afford assisted living where he'll likely develop new friends. UOP get new neighbors that are not criminals. Cops get to bust the druggies again with possible elder abuse charges tacked on. Everybody wins. Well, druggies not so much. Hope this helps. This kind of thing happens so much in the UK that it's actually got a term now. I'm not sure if it's the same in other places as well, but it's called cuckooing. And the term comes from the cuckoo bird, which lays its eggs in other birds' nests. Makes sense, right? So OP comes in with their first update and says, about a week ago I posted talking about my issues with my neighbor driving through my yard in the past and how I had the police tell him to stop, and how more recently my neighbor dumped a large box TV on my property, caught on my cameras and reported to the police. Yesterday my camera caught my neighbor leaving a handwritten note on my door that I read when I got home from work, and I also heard from the police regarding the TV. I'll start with the conversation I had with the police and leeway into the note he left on my door. The police had been trying to reach my neighbor by phone for the last week and had made multiple visits to their house to tell him to remove the TV. But he wasn't answering his phone or the door, so the officers on duty had been making routine visits on our street to see if they could catch him outside, and they finally did. They told him that he had to remove the TV and he was livid. Naturally, he tried to claim that the property wasn't mine and was his. It's mine. Not sure why he thinks otherwise, considering a fence separates our properties, and that he could do what he wants. The officers said whether it was mine or his was irrelevant, as littering is littering and you can't dispose of electric waste by dropping it in the woods and pretending it isn't there. So they told him he had to dispose of it properly, and they told me that if the TV isn't gone in 3 or 4 days, to call them again, and they're going to give him a citation for it. So that was yesterday that this conversation happened between them. Around lunchtime was when my Ring camera caught him leaving the note. The note said along the lines of, I'm giving you until June 1st to trim branches of a tree on your property that are dropping leaves and twigs into my property, and I'm filing a civil suit against you. I'm tired of picking up the sticks and leaves dropped on my yard by your tree. So naturally the first thing I did was look up my state and local laws. I went to the police station to notify the officers that this happened so they were aware of it and could make a report. The officers at the station told me not to worry about it, that they know what he's like and he wouldn't actually go through with it. He's just mad that I got him in trouble and is taking it out on me with any excuse he can come up with. And the officers told me it's not my responsibility to take care of it. Our state and local laws state that it's not the responsibility of the owner to trim branches that protrude over the property line, but that property owner that is protruding on is allowed to cut back the branches back off their property line. Whether you agree with that or not is up to you, but that's the law that I both read and that the police department informed me of. But here's the thing, The tree is healthy and it's not dropping large branches or anything of the sort, nor does it go over anything that would cause damage to his property. Even if it did, insurance takes care of that. It's not my responsibility. He's obviously butthurt about me getting him in trouble these last few months and is reaching at anything he possibly can to cause trouble for me like I have for him. Unfortunately, I'm an upstanding citizen and he has no grounds to get me in trouble with anything. Also, our police department and local government despises him and his residents so much that even if this somehow does go to court, his wording is nothing compared to mine. So, I'm calling his bluff and ignoring him. I know him well enough at this point too. I'm not giving him the attention he wants. If he would have been kind about the situation and had a respectful conversation with me about the tree, I would have been a lot more considerate. But he didn't even talk to me about it. Now he thinks he can threaten me. He can forget it. The amount he's inconvenienced me severely outweighs leaves falling from my tree into his yard. Maybe when he stops driving across my yard and dumping garbage on my property and trespassing, I think about whether or not to help him. I can't believe there's people on this planet so selfish. See my last post for the details on how these people are the scum of our community. Crack dealing sociopaths in the one garbage house of our nice neighborhood. I'm really disappointed things have ended up this way because the whole reason I even got the house was because of the neighborhood. But I had to pick the one place next door to the crack dealers and trespassers. Again, fuck my life. I'm gonna start looking for a new place to live. I'm so thankful the police have been so helpful and understanding of the situation, but it seems no matter how many times I send them and no matter how willing they are to cause trouble for me, this needless drama won't end until they're out of that house or I just leave. I keep to myself. I'm a single, quiet guy who minds his own business and his own house. I just want to be left alone. It's time to start looking elsewhere, I think. Anyways, I hope my strife has been entertaining. I'll probably have another update after the first week of June regarding all of this. Would you have done anything differently? Let me know if you have any advice. Thanks. Ooh, I thought we was going to be dipping into tree lore there for a second. But we do have another update in a moment, but I just keep coming back to nightmare neighbors and my childhood growing up and dealing with potential nightmare neighbors and what you do, because OP's saying that they might have to move out of their house to escape the situation, which I always find incredibly sad. But again, I'm only talking about the UK here. I can't talk for other places. And it was a nightmare to get some nightmare neighbors out of the property. I mean, it can take months, years even. And I'm mainly talking about like rental properties in the UK. Again, where I live, as you've probably heard before, I lived on a council estate and there was always some sort of drama going on and a lot of nightmare neighbors, some of it absolutely wild. But it would take surveillance, it would take the council coming out multiple times to talk to them, to give them warnings, to say, oh, you're going to lose your tenancy if you carry on with this behavior. Then it would calm down for a few months, the warnings would get taken away and it would all flare back up again. Just so wild. But OP comes in with another update and says, this will be my final update regarding what's been going on, unless anything substantial happens in the future. I don't think anything else is going to come from this particular situation, but some things have happened between now and my last post. Here's what happened. In my last post, I told the story of my recent strife with my neighbor, an old man who keeps trespassing on my property and drove through my yard on multiple occasions, only stopping after the police made him do so. He then trespassed again by dumping a large box TV in my woods in my backyard. After telling the police about the TV and they confronted him and told him to remove it, he left a note on my door threatening legal action for a tree that's dropping leaves and twigs in his yard, and if I didn't take care of it by June 1st, he'd be suing me. For the finer details where I went into more depth about it, see my last post from about a week and a half ago from the link above. As for the update, it's now June 3rd and naturally I've done nothing about the tree. Countless conversations with other people, including the police, as well as my own research, tell me I'm not responsible. I haven't heard from the neighbor, haven't heard from anybody on his behalf, haven't gotten any more notes on my door or in my mailbox or anything of the sort. It was just as we suspected. All bark, no bite. He was mad about me getting him in trouble and tried to intimidate me, and it didn't work. He's since removed the TV. Where he put it, I'm not sure. I never saw it on the curb for the garbage or anything. For all I know, he could have just threw it in his own woods, but I don't care enough to attempt to find out. It's off my property and none of my business anymore as a result. I also double-checked with the police to be sure that he was trespassed for good, and they assured me he was, and him removing the TV from my property was the last time he or anybody in that house was permitted from stepping foot on it. and he understood this. As many commenters suggested, I went down to our local human services building in our township and spoke to somebody in our office of aging. It's our version of adult protective services. I spent an hour at their office and made a full report on the whole situation to them. The old man and his seemingly declined mental state and physical state, the types of people living with him. I gave them all the juicy details. From the footage of him struggling to climb 2 stairs on my porch to leave the note showcasing his physical state, to another time where he chased a squirrel on his lawnmower into my yard showcasing his mental state. I even showed them the footage I had from the raid on his house, where the people that were living with them were temporarily arrested for dealing crack out of his house. I gave them the names of people living with him, given to me by my buddy in the police department who has been dealing with them for me. I left no detail out, no stone unturned. The woman I spoke with submitted the report to their investigation unit, but she said I wouldn't get an update regarding the situation. I'm only going to hear from anybody if they ask for more information from me. Only time will tell if this will do any good, not only for myself, but for the old man too. To summarize, the TV is off my property. They're officially trespassed, their legal action threats were bluffs, and they haven't driven on my yard since. I feel better about everything, and I'm hoping that this is the last I have to deal with for the foreseeable future. But only time will tell. Of course, should anything else happen, I'll be quick to tell it here. But for now, this will be the last time I post regarding this situation. I also want to thank everybody for the suggestions made on my previous posts. I wouldn't have thought to make a report with the Office of Aging if it wasn't for commenters. Here's hoping he gets the help he needs, and I get the peace and quiet I've been longing for. There was a commenter below this who mentioned cuckooing and said, this is Future Direction, who says what the ragtag people living with him is called cuckooing here in the UK. But sadly, there isn't a lot that can be done to stop it, and to be honest, it's even possible that at least one of the gang is a relative of his, a son or a nephew perhaps, who the old man is happy to help by providing a home. Which sounds like exactly the same situation that I was watching. I spoke about the old woman who was, took her grandson in, and she was talking to people that were visiting her, and she was saying, he's a good boy, he's just been in trouble a couple of times, he's trying to get back on his feet, when this kid had absolutely no plan of doing so, just taking advantage of his grandma, borrowing money from her when he can, and who knows what else he was up to behind closed doors as well. It's incredibly sad and happens far too often. Whilst the neighbour was an absolute pain in the ass to OP, I'm glad he did reach out to those services to potentially get him some help. You never know whether it's going to help or not, but I think OP's done all he can in this situation whilst protecting his own peace as well. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And seeing as we're on the neighbor stories, seeing as we get sucked into it, I absolutely love it. I went exploring our very own subreddit, r/Mark Narrations. If you've got your own neighbor story, don't forget to share it over there. And I spotted a story called The Craziest Neighbor I Ever Had, with a final bit of revenge. It starts, "Hi Mark, after watching a video of a crazy neighbor on your channel, I wanted to share my story of the craziest neighbor I've ever had in my 51 years of life. My 51 female was 24. First apartment. I was on the bottom floor and had 3 neighbors above me in the 2 years I was in this apartment. The first 2 were always relatively quiet. They were the usual sounds any normal human makes, and it never bothered me. The first one was only there maybe 2 or 3 months and moved for work. The second was there the majority of the time until the third moved in. His name was Tony. He was single and a state trooper. He was always so nice, flirted like crazy, but never over the line and never serious. He would help anyone with anything. He regularly had dinner parties once or twice a month, which could be heard but never very late into the night and not obnoxiously loud. There was always an open invitation to his neighbors too, if we ever wanted to join. He became engaged and moved out. The third upstairs neighbor is the focus of my story. I've lived around the country for 30 years, US Navy, and she was by far the worst. She was insane. She would make loud noises on purpose to get my attention. When I told my dad, over the phone because he was in another state, He said she may be just lonely and encouraged me to talk to her. I'd welcomed her, but hadn't really visited, so I decided maybe he was right and she was just trying to get me up there again. I knocked and she answered, saying she couldn't have visitors inside because it wasn't clean enough. When she realized I just wanted to be friendly, she did let me in just to sit near the door. That was fine. It was clean and tidy, so she likely lied to keep me out when she didn't trust my intentions. Totally understandable. She immediately started complaining about how much she hated that apartment. It wasn't like what she wanted. It wasn't good enough. That her husband's made them move from a mansion into that apartment to punish her. That her kids never visited because they hated her and wanted to punish her. I worried she may be in a domestic violence situation, so I asked what she meant by punish. Apparently, her husband took away her money because she caused so much debt. They lost their house and went into bankruptcy. Her kids broke contact with her because she had to borrow their credit. I assumed identity theft, but she didn't clarify what she meant. She went on and on about how she was entitled to the finest things in life because she was raised to believe she was a gift to the world from God. As soon as she said that, I wanted to leave. I'd already gotten weird vibes from her from the start, but I assumed it was just my annoyance at her previous behavior. Nope. The more she talked, the creepier she got. I was about to excuse myself and leave, but she beat me to it. She said I had to go because her husband would be leaving work soon and she had to call him to place a takeout order. He worked at a local high-end restaurant. So, okay, I thought she was crazy, but maybe she would at least stop trying to get my attention. Nope. It got worse. She would turn up the radio and TV at the same time, stomp on the floor, move furniture, run the dishwasher all day long. Everything at once to make as much noise as possible. It would last all day long until her husband would come home. I was gone during the day a lot, visiting friends or grocery shopping, so I don't know if she shut things off when I wasn't there. I tried speaking to her about it, and she swore I was imagining things. That she didn't do anything of the sort, and that she napped most of the day and didn't make a peep. I finally had to call the front office because I couldn't take it anymore. As soon as a maintenance man arrived, we didn't have security and the office ladies were too lazy to do it, she stopped everything. They came to speak to me and said they could tell she had just climbed out of the shower or just woken up or had just arrived home. I had to call them multiple times, and every time she made up some lie. She went as far to actually wet her hair or have night clothes on or have her purse in her hand to look believable. The entire staff started accusing me of harassing a lonely old woman. I would hear her crying to the maintenance men that she was so scared of me, that she barely tiptoed because she was so scared I would come up and hurt her. I asked neighbors, but the apartment next to her belonged to a guy on deployment and no one across the halls heard anything. I had no witnesses, just my word against hers. I couldn't move out for 3 months, so I had to suck it up. I was out one day and ran into my former upstairs neighbor, Tony, the state trooper. I told him everything and he was shocked. He came up with a plan. He would follow me home but park in another area. Then he would walk around the other entrance into our corridor so she couldn't see. He wanted me to give him the keys to my apartment and for me to make sure she saw me unloading things from my car. He would sit inside my apartment and wait to see if it was quiet and to see when the noise would start. I did as he said and pulled into my parking space a bit after I knew Tony was settled into my apartment. I was at my car and looked up at an angle where she couldn't see me looking. She was at the window of a balcony watching me. Oh, that's chilling. I gathered my bags and headed to my door. After about 2 minutes inside my apartment, the banging started. I looked at Tony and his eyes got big. It was so loud and so chaotic, it sounded like a construction site. He whispered to me to call the office. He told me not to tell him he was there and to demand an office employee come, not a maintenance man. The woman I spoke to, Heather, huffed and told me I would have to wait a few minutes because she was busy. Tony and I sat near my window listening to the chaos for about half an hour. As soon as we saw Heather arrive in the golf cart they used to roam the property, all of the banging stopped. He looked at me shaking his head. He told me to go let Heather in but not to tell her he was there yet. He wanted to hear what Heather would tell me. I answered my door and Heather came inside. She raised her hand before I spoke and said, "Don't say anything, OP. This has to stop. What do you want to come out of all these complaints? What did she do to you to make you act this way? You used to be so nice." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself from slapping the living fuck out of her and her condescending tone. I said, "You don't understand. I've explained it to you time and time again that as soon as she sees you guys pull up, she gets quiet. She is there watching for you. She bangs around furniture and stomps around to drive me crazy. I don't know what her problem is. I've always been nice to her." Heather looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're lying and we've had enough. Your lease runs out soon and we will not be renewing it." At this time, Tony came into the room and she looked shocked to see him. Everyone in the complex knew him and respected him. She asked what he was doing here, and he told her everything. He told her that I invited him over and what he witnessed of that insane bitch. His words. He explained that he snuck in so she didn't know anyone else was inside. He told her that everything was quiet while he waited for me. But as soon as I walked in, all the noise started. He told her he had never heard anything like what he heard coming from that apartment. He described it as an army preparing for war above his head. He told her how everything got quiet the minute we saw Heather pull up in the golf cart. Then he said, "Are you going to call me a liar, Heather?" Her face went pale and then red from embarrassment. All she could do was say, "I'll take care of it." She left, then we heard her walk upstairs. We heard muffled voices, and then a loud scream, then loud crying. He ran upstairs to make sure no one was fighting. The neighbor started throwing things at Heather, including an umbrella, an iron, and high-heeled shoes. Needless to say, she and her husband were evicted. I moved out a month early, no penalty. They gave me my full deposit back. I've lived in some really weird places, but that one was the most insane experience with a neighbor. Let me know if you want to know about the most haunted one. Lol. And yes, OP, we do want to know about the haunted neighbor. Gee whiz. It sounds like OP's bumped into someone from like these previous Reddit stories where she's committed identity theft against their children. The children have gone no contact, and then OP's bumped into her in later life. But it sounds like Tony, the state trooper, was an absolute legend in this. And I think, like you, getting yourself out of that apartment straight away, even though she was evicted, because the people who's running the show sound like they're awful as well. But as always, what do you guys make of this situation? I've never had an apartment living by myself, but it sounds like some of the stories that come from it are absolutely wild. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you have your own story, don't forget you can share it at r/marknarrations. Feel free to do so. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.